What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Accelerate Your Life podcast. We are here for another week, another Thursday, another episode. And today I am joined by Jess Sexton. I always like to say Jessica, but we always only call you Jess. Jess Sexton, she is one of our fantastic EA coaches. We're slowly making our rounds through all of the EA coaches, and I'm super excited to finally have you here. All of the coaches have offered such a unique perspective so far. And I think it's been just such a good reminder of no matter, who you are, you're a coach, you're a fitness expert, like we are all these things, but we all still have such unique perspectives. And again, I think that's just a good reminder that everybody's health and fitness can look so, so different. And if the title of this episode did not give it away, we are going to be talking a lot about pregnancy, specifically IVF, and also how your health and fitness intertwines with that journey, as Jess is currently going through all of that now. So beyond being an amazing mother to be, I'll give her a little intro. Jess is also a NASM CPT, NASM certified nutrition coach. She's pre and postnatal certified, and she was on the track to be an RD to be still potentially. So she's got a lot of knowledge there. But Jess, happy to have you here. Is there anything that you want to add before we dive on in?
No, I'm super excited to do this with all of you guys and to kind of get to talk to you guys about like what IVF even is. I feel like a lot of people do not know what IVF is about, and I am super open about all of it. I was at first when we were going through it, I was very like sheltered, didn't want anybody to know what we were struggling with, but then I realized how much people need to, learn about this area. So I'm excited to go through it all with you.
Yeah, me too, because transparently, this is not anything that I am super knowledgeable about. And I know you and I went back a little, like back and forth a little bit. I've asked you questions here and there just completely out of curiosity. And it's been so interesting. So I am very excited for my own self to get curious today and learn more. I'm turning my notifications off so I don't get any more dings. But before we dive into all of that, I do ask every time we have a guest, I like to kind of just open the door, kind of a little icebreaker, and ask everyone, what is one thing that you love about life right now?
One thing that I love about life right now. Oh God. I mean, there's so many things. I just love my family. I mean, I love my husband. He has literally been my rock through this pregnancy and he knows that I have like issues with sleeping at night, so he will deal with the dogs so then I can get better sleep, which is so nice. Um and yeah, I feel like that's like my main thing. I just have a huge love for my husband.
Shout out Tanner. We love Tanner. All the men out there. Tanner's the role model. Awesome. What a great answer. Okay, cool. Well, as mentioned in the intro, this is a wonderful, you are expecting, which congratulations, by the way. Obviously, I already said that, but we'll have everybody on the pod say it to you. Remind me, when exactly are you due again?
April 30th. So I'm
Oh,
actually 24 weeks today.
okay. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. That's like gonna be, I mean, so yeah, 3 months, right? 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5 or
Okay,
so.
it's coming. Has it felt pretty quick?
Yes,
Yeah.
surprisingly. A lot of people did not think that it was going to feel fast since we literally went through the whole process of IVF
True.
and everything. But shockingly, even to myself, like it feels like it's flying by, which is crazy.
Yeah, I always kind of think about that. Like one day when I'm pregnant, I feel like the first couple months before you're showing and before you, well, I was gonna say before you really have symptoms, but I know that can sometimes do in the morning sickness is there. But if you are lucky enough to not really have morning sickness, then you really probably wouldn't notice much different. So I feel like the first few months could be kind of like, it doesn't really change all that much. No.
Kinda, in a way. In a way, I actually made a TikTok post about this not too long
Oh,
ago. About like the top couple of things that are not talked about in early pregnancy that
okay.
you just like do not realize are going to happen. So like yeah, one of the things of course is the nausea that a lot of people do get. But like frequent urination, that's
Hmm.
another one. First trimester did not expect that. I was up 3 times a night, like literally
Oh,
from
wow. That's my
weeks.
normal
So
night, so that wouldn't be any different for me.
like crazy. Yeah, so there was definitely a couple of things that you notice in the beginning, but showing wise, yes, you're right. Like you really don't notice that until 20 weeks, at least for your first.
There is probably so many things that people don't talk about during, you know, like there's your notable things, right? Like morning sickness, showing, but like a lot of things that, yeah, don't get talked about. So you're doing the Lord's work out there on TikTok. Letting them know. But cool. Well, like I said, this is not something I'm educated in, IVF. I think it's so interesting, and it's definitely becoming a much more, I think, prominent thing, and maybe always kind of was, but like you said at the beginning, you were almost didn't want to talk about it. And I think a lot of people have kind of felt that stigma, up until I feel like recently it's just becoming a lot more open, whether that's that the more people are having to go through it, or again, it's just becoming more open. But I'm excited to really dive into it today. So kind of first question I have though is, when did you begin to realize that you guys may need to look into that as the IVF route? Like, how long had you been trying? You know, what were there sort of signs that that was the route you had to go? I'd love to kind of know what that looked like.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this short, but I feel like this story is very long. So my husband and I knew that we wanted to start trying shortly after we got married. We ended up having a COVID wedding in 2020, so we really couldn't do like the big wedding. So we ended up doing the big wedding the following year. We still got married in 2020, but then did like a vow renewal in 2021. That was also the same year that I did a bodybuilding competition. So since I had to do the bodybuilding competition and whatnot, we knew that we were not going to try to get pregnant until after my show was over. So second wedding happened, show happened 2 months later, and then we were like, okay, once I get my cycle back, we're going to start trying. And so that's what we started to do. We had a feeling it would take at least 3+ months, just knowing that my hormones needed to get regulated and stuff again. And so the first 3 months, nothing happened. I'm like, okay, maybe it's going to take a few more months. Still, same thing. Another few more months, nothing happened. I was ovulating. I was getting my cycle regularly every month. And I was kind of just like, I just knew something was off. Like, I just knew that there was something that wasn't right. So I went to my OB. I had them do blood work, run some tests. I did have to get a hysteroscopy done. You know, they found certain things, and I don't know how detailed you want me to go, but in my uterus.
Completely, yeah. Completely up to you. I'm imagining most of our audience is women, first of all. So I think we can get into the nitty-gritty. And yeah, I think it's good. I mean, people can relate, so I'm sure they know also too what you're talking about.
Yeah, no TMI here, guys.
No TMI. Not when it comes to coaching.
No. So I ended up having to get a hysteroscopy done because of that. And then she was like, okay, you should be good to go. Continue trying. Continue to try, still nothing happened. And I'm like, there is something wrong hormonally. Like I could just like feel it. Like I was getting very, very heavy periods, very uncomfortable, cramping, 8+ days long. Like I just knew I had hair falling out. Like it was just, I had some weird things going on. And so I told her I wanted her to test my hormones. My OB actually like did not. She said no to doing it. And she said, oh, I'll check your iron. That's about it. You're getting a normal cycle. You're fine. And I'm like, just because you're getting a normal cycle doesn't mean that there's not something wrong. So I took matters into my own hands, went to go see an endocrinologist, had them run like a full panel, go to find out that I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So a thyroid condition, that's an autoimmune disease that I did not realize that I had. Go to find out that I have family members who also have it, who I had no idea had it. And so I'm sitting here thinking, oh, okay, we solved the problem. This was it. This is why we haven't been able to conceive for the past year. And so started dealing with that, got on, thyroid medication to try to regulate things, because honestly, my thyroid wasn't that off, but I had the antibodies where, things were fighting off against everything. So a few months of that with everything regulated, still nothing happened. And I'm like, what is going on? So usually you have to wait up until at least a year to go see any kind of like fertility help. And so that's when me and my husband decided that we wanted to go seek out a fertility specialist to see if there was something else going on, because it just didn't make sense. Like I was ovulating, I was getting a cycle consistently every month. My thyroid levels were okay. Everything was normal. And so, excuse me, they ran blood work, full panel of tests, semen analysis, you name it. And that's when we found out that we were having issues with conceiving. They would not even basically, because what you could do is you could do a thing that's called IUI, in utero insemination, or you could do IVF as in vitro fertilization. So Usually doctors will start you off doing IUI first, and that's kind of what your insurance companies will require that you do first to see if you can get pregnant that way before going directly to IVF. But based on what our results were, they said IUI wouldn't even work for us, so we had to go directly to IVF.
Okay.
So yeah, to answer your question, it took probably about like a year and a half of us to figure this out.
Okay. I've actually never heard of IUI, which is interesting because if that's the thing you have to typically do first, or the route that most they would say, or with insurance, you would think that that would be a much more prominent name, and hopefully that would work for a lot of people. But, and to your knowledge, is that, this is just me being curious, like, does that not usually end up being a route for people to be able to go?
Um, Not all the time. I mean, a lot of times, like, so if the semen analysis comes back normal, then usually the female should be able to get pregnant using, like normal IUI. So they would basically end up mass producing eggs. I didn't go through it. I'm still kind of
Yeah,
learning
right.
the process with some of the things, but they would end up mass producing eggs. They would end up, they wouldn't actually put the semen inside of the egg and kind of like do everything like they do for IVF. So they would kind of hopefully have you almost naturally get pregnant in a way with a little bit of help from medication to like mass produce eggs and stuff like that.
Okay.
So usually they do that first because it's less invasive, and usually it will work if you have no issues with like your semen or anything like that. In our situation, it wouldn't have worked like that. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay. And of course, and if anything is too personal, we can, and I can always edit it out, I would say, in post too. But it sounds like for you guys, it was not necessarily on your side. It was not the Hashimoto's. It was not anything that had gone on from like bodybuilding, or was it a combo of both?
It's a little bit of a
Okay.
combo of both. And Tanner is I love my husband. He's a saint. He is okay. Like, he's pretty okay with me being like open about all of this. And so it was honestly a combination of everything. It was a combination of the fact that I had the Hashimoto's. And I do believe that that came out from the bodybuilding. Usually that lays dormant in your body until something stressful takes it out. So a lot of times people don't realize that they have it until after they go through childbirth or pregnancy. For me, I think it was my competition. So it definitely was related to that. I also just have issues for some reason with getting polyps in my uterus. So I actually had to go through 2 hysteroscopies before we ended up going through all of this to remove even more polyps that for some reason formed. So it definitely was partially me, but then also partially the semen analysis. Yes, he had low sperm count, low motility, and low morphologies, or like poor morphology. So basically, like, the shape wasn't normal for most of them. They didn't move correctly, and there wasn't a lot of
Okay.
them.
Well,
Yeah.
that kind of brings me to my next question, that I guess is for you, and obviously Tanner's not here, but maybe you can kind of shed light if you guys have had this conversation at all. I and I'll preface this question with, in ways I feel like I can relate. As you know, and as everybody listening to the podcast probably knows, I've been dealing with so many hormonal issues myself. And I know for me, it's taken a big hit on, I don't know, like ego is not the right word, but like my, I guess, expertise in this space, as somebody who practices such a, tries my best to be pretty perfect with health and fitness, really promotes health and fitness, and to still end up struggling with these hormonal issues. It's incredibly frustrating, and it's definitely hurt. I guess ego is the right word. Hurt my ego in the space, and like what makes me feel like I have, sometimes imposter syndrome. And so for you guys, I mean, I know obviously you are a health and fitness coach. You are on the track to be an RD. I know Tanner is very active, and I know you guys prioritize your health. So was kind of finding this out, did it have any effect on, y'all, like your, just like confidence, I guess, in your professionalism and what you do, or did it creep up, I guess, in like imposter syndrome or anything like that?
I definitely have to say, like, it was shocking for us to find out 100%, because we just, like you said, just didn't understand how we were even dealing with this. Like, you don't realize that, like, you never think that you're going to be the person to be put in this situation until you're the person in that situation. So it was definitely a shock to us, and we kind of went back and forth, like, is it something that we did? Like, are there different things that we should try? Like, I mean, I know that this sounds super silly, but like, I was the person anytime we would have sex or something. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can say that.
You can say that. We're adults.
Okay. Anytime we would have sex, I would be the person to literally lift my butt up, hoping that that would help. And same thing with like hot tubs. I would tell him he wasn't allowed to go in hot tubs and wasn't allowed to wear tight underwear and like all of those things, because like, you want to try everything
For
possible to see
sure.
like, is it something that we're actually doing? And in reality, it's not all the time. So like, I think it was a little bit of a hard pill to swallow because it was just such a new realm to be going through. But at the same time, I am kind of like, it was kind of cool to go through it too, because we learned a lot about a topic that we were so uneducated in.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're still learning even to this day, but I mean, now, yeah, now we're more educated in it. We're more aware. And honestly, it's made us more aware too of how to approach others also now in life, because I think a lot of people don't realize, when somebody gets married, everybody's like, oh, when are you going to start having kids? And now you're more aware of that. Like that kept happening to us. And that's why we ended up coming out about us doing all of this, because we just kept having people come to us saying like, when are you going to have kids? You've been married for a couple of years. Oh, if you're anything like me, you're going to get pregnant as fast as possible. And it was eating away at us. So now like we're more aware of how to approach other people too.
100%. That there's a lot of routes within everything you just said. I could take so many things I want to potentially touch on. But one thing that's interesting, parallel that I just thought of while you were saying all of that is kind of like you say it's funny now, like the funny things, that you guys were kind of trying, right? That thinking like, does this have a play in it? And I'm guessing for most of those things now that more, you realize like that doesn't really affect it. But that made me think of, people with a lot of their fitness goals and health goals, right? And how they'll hear, don't eat this or eat only after or only before 5 p.m. And like, they'll do these things that, because it's that desperation of like really wanting to see change without education. And it's just interesting to see kind of the parallel of where it can play in other things and almost like the fear mongering too, that can come from just all these, all these places and where you're trying to, and when you're in that vulnerable spot, whether it's with IVF and really like, or just pregnancy and really want to get pregnant, or with your health and really just like having so much confidence issues and you want to lose these 50 pounds and you're desperate. And like, when you are coming from that desperation, vulnerable place, I think it's really easy to get trapped in a lot of these myths and lies. And I guess question out of that would be, do you feel like your knowledge with health and fitness kind of helped you quickly get out of that and learn what was true? Or do you think that had a play in it at all?
Um, it's a yes and no, I guess. I don't know. It's difficult to say because like this is so different than anything I've ever
Totally.
gone through in relation to health and fitness. So I think that health and fitness definitely helped me while I was going through all of it to make sure that I was eating appropriately and eating enough, and making sure that I was getting enough vitamins in and getting enough exercise, because all of those things are very important when you're going through IVF, just like they're important just in everyday life. So I definitely think that it was helpful in that area. But yeah, it's like, IVF is so different too, though,
Sure.
because it's so invasive and you're putting all of these hormones in your body. And I truthfully never thought I would ever do something like this, which is crazy. I hate the thought of like putting, stuff in my body that doesn't need to be there. So yeah, I would say yes and no in a way.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people obviously ever really think that this is going to be the route they have to go. But like we said earlier, it's becoming a lot more common for whatever reason, whether it wasn't talked about as much before, or a lot of people are struggling with it, which this could be a whole nother tangent that I go on. But kind of, as I was talking about with like us having potentially having imposter syndrome or feeling like, why are we struggling with this when we are supposed to be the healthy ones, right? I think there's a lot to do with now just what's in our world, the way our food's produced, the art, the preservatives and things that, and that could be a whole rabbit hole, but I don't think there's a coincidence that a lot of these fertility issues and hormonal issues are popping up way more than they ever were before. But again, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But I'd love to personally for like know for you personally how more about how health and fitness has or hasn't played a role in all of this. And I know obviously this has not been an easy road by any means. But you guys were successful. This was your second transfer, is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So we ended up doing our first transfer in April into May. Yeah, April into May. Our first transfer failed. That first transfer was a fresh transfer. So you could do a fresh transfer or a frozen. Fresh transfer is pretty much within 5 days of having your egg retrieval done is when they'll transfer an embryo in. And it's a little difficult because your body is still healing kind of from having the egg retrieval done. My thyroid also was getting really wonky during my first cycle. And sometimes it's just due to being on like the estrogen and things like that. Like all of the hormones can kind of throw it off. So I do think that kind of was partially the reason why it might not have worked. But then the second transfer was a frozen transfer. And yes, it worked.
Awesome. And again, not familiar with this at all, but is it being successful on the second transfer like pretty good odds? Or like
Yeah.
pretty good, like because I know stories of a lot of people who try and try and try and it never takes.
Yeah, I guess it's hit and miss. It depends on the person. There have been studies that do show that frozen transfers are more successful than fresh transfers. And I still went the fresh transfer route anyway, just because we really like wanted to get pregnant so
Yeah.
bad. And I was like, oh, my body reacted super well to stims. I feel like it'll be fine. And so I kind of like, in a sense, regret it because it's just, even though we didn't get pregnant, it's almost like we had a loss anyway, just because our embryo didn't stick.
Right.
But I totally just lost track of what you just said now.
No, I was just asking if it's pretty good odds to have it be successful on take two, or that kind of early, right? Because I know a lot of people will go through multiple.
Right. Yeah, it definitely is. It is good to have a successful second try. And yeah, again, it's just dependent on everybody's response to going through IVF. It also is dependent on like some people have PCOS, and thankfully that was something that I wasn't dealing with, but that can make it a lot more difficult to become pregnant or even stay pregnant. It also depends on the embryo, the grade of the embryo, and things like that. That kind of tell whether or not the embryo is going to stick or not. You could also get genetic testing to make sure that the embryo is going to stick. There's so much that like
Yeah.
revolves around whether or not it will be successful or not. But yeah, a second attempt is very good.
And I'm sure a huge part of what it could depend on is also that female's health up until that point, how they've taken care of themselves, how they fuel their body, how they've exercised, and just what kind of health they're in. Because also at the end of the day, like whether you're doing traditional, sex in order to get pregnant or IVF, like your body only wants to have a child, have a successful fertilization, and if it feels safe enough to do that. So if you're not in a place where you're healthy, it's not going to feel like, whether that means you're underweight, overweight, it's just not going to feel like it's an environment where you're going to be able to successfully bring a baby to term. So I think there's a lot to do with that. Obviously, that's something you've prioritized for most of your life. So do you think, how much, I guess, do you think, and if there's anything specific, do you think really played a part in you having a relatively early successful transfer?
Um, I mean, like you mentioned, I definitely think that my nutrition and my fitness definitely played a huge role in it. I think that if I wasn't, I mean, before I got into my health and fitness journey, I was, 25, 30 pounds heavier. I literally ate junk all the time. I maybe worked out once a week, if that. Like I was not consistent. And so with me being on this health and fitness journey, I definitely think that played a really huge role into it. Same thing with like Tanner too. He has always been very physically active and was always doing the same thing, taking the precautions necessary to make sure that everything on his end would be, as optimal as possible, taking vitamins, like, doing all of the things to make sure that we were in the best health possible.
Awesome. Yeah, I would have to imagine that definitely like, your odds increase. You're going to also have just in general, whether again, if it's a traditional pregnancy or not, like you're going to have a probably more than likely better pregnancy in terms of ease. Also the recovery after, that's where I think a lot of the difference is like how quickly you can quote unquote bounce back. And I don't necessarily mean just like weight loss or, that extra weight gain. I mean like your body healing itself and being able to move and stuff again. I think prioritizing your health and fitness before pregnancy and during a pregnancy has a huge impact on that. Um, I know we've had a lot of clients come to us who are beginning to start the IVF route, in the IVF route, and they're wondering, is this maybe one of the missing pieces? Do I really need to dial in my nutrition and fitness? Is that going to really help my odds here? What would you say to somebody wondering that? And are there any specific parts of their health and fitness that you would really encourage someone, a client, to focus on if they're going to be going through this journey?
Yeah, I would 100% say yes. We want to make sure that we're focusing on nutrition and fitness, and not necessarily like we don't need to be going through a cutting phase. We don't need to be going through like any kind of phase, just with like making sure we're staying consistent. So consistent with hitting a certain amount of protein, carbs, fat, getting in certain fruits and vegetables. Like some people don't get any fruits and vegetables in at all, like during the day and stuff. So a lot of these food groups are beneficial for so many different reasons. Honestly, like a lot of these foods, like certain foods and stuff, can be super helpful for like fertility in general. So like, trying to focus on things like that, focusing on like low inflammation kind of foods and stuff, depending on, the reason as to why they need to go through IVF in the first place. And then just getting consistent with a workout routine too. Again, not saying that we have to do like 5 workouts per week and literally put our body through a ton of stress, but just getting consistent, so then we're giving our body some sort of normalcy, because it will definitely help in the long run.
I very much agree. But you are more so the expert in this field as than I. That was definitely not the right to say that. So thank you for kind of your insight there. But yeah, obviously it's been a tough journey, but I have really loved getting to kind of watch kind of on the sidelines. It's been very inspiring, and you've done, I think, an incredible job of sharing it on Instagram, on TikTok, and really trying to be a place where I know a lot of other women who have questions have been going through it, because I know you were kind of seeking that out when you were starting it too. But since you've almost been on kind of all sides of it, the figuring out, you need to go through this, the pregnancy, and then we're almost to the end of it. What would you say to encourage, whether it just be the woman or the whole couple listening, who's been told, maybe recently to a surprise to them, like, this is the route you're going to have to go?
Um, some advice what I would say is don't give up on each other. I think that a lot of times when individuals, like couples, have to go through things like this, it's very easy to put the blame on each other. And so, number one, always make sure that you are sticking by each other's sides and holding each other's hand through the entire process, because you don't know how one person feels versus how the other person feels. And who knows, it might be both of your fault, kind of like what it is for Tanner and I and stuff. So you always want to make sure that you're there for each other, because this is going to be a hard process to go through in general. So you want to have that support person there. Secondly, is I would say give yourself grace. So, going through IVF, especially like as a female who has to go through all of the hormones and all of the shots and everything, like it's a lot on your body. So, if you were used to working out 4 or 5 times per week, and maybe you're only able to get like 2 workouts in that week because you're just really not feeling yourself, that's okay. Or maybe you're not able to get any in. And even for myself, like after I ended up finally becoming pregnant, I was nervous to work out. And like, I'm going to be very honest, most people I feel like are going to feel like that, because it took you so long to get to this point, and you're in such a new territory that you kind of feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do anything that's going to put too much stress on my body and cause an issue with this pregnancy or something like that. So like for me, I pretty much didn't work out up until I was through the whole entire first trimester, which is like crazy for me to say, because like that's not normal for me.
Right.
But I had to give myself grace and say like, listen, this is what's going to help me mentally. This is what's going to be like, it's okay. I've worked out enough up until this point. My body is in an okay place. So definitely give yourself grace, would be another recommendation. Yeah, so giving yourself grace and supporting each other.
I think those were two great ones. A little bit of couples advice, couples therapy, and then a little bit of personal health and fitness. I think on the last one too, what you just said there, that's just important to remember at all times. Basically, kind of what I gathered is, or something that I thought of when you were saying that is, knowing that your journey is just going to look different than anybody else's, because I think that there's so much benefit of you probably have seeking out tons of information online and following other people who have been through the IVF journey, and now we're hoping that you can, I know you want to be that for others, and that's awesome. But then at the same time too, you could end up following these people who are working out all first trimester or doing whatever, and this can also apply, again, not even to pregnancy or IVF, but just anything. It's easy to fall into that trap of, well, they're doing this. Should I be doing that? And I think it's good to follow these people who can inspire you and you can learn from, but also remember your journey doesn't still have to look exactly like yours or theirs.
Yeah,
It's great.
I agree. And like also, sorry to cut you off, like
Mhm.
also just always listening to what your doctors say too. Cause like that was another reason why at the very beginning I didn't work out, because like they didn't want you working out for a period of time after your transfer. But then I started getting in my head about it and I'm like, oh my God, I'm pregnant now. No, I don't know if I should do this. I'm too nervous. Like, so anyway, yes, you're right. Everybody's journey is going to be different. And it doesn't mean that you have to follow any specific journey. Your journey is your journey.
It is. It is. Awesome. Well, I think that kind of wraps up all my questions. You were very generous. Lots of information. I learned a lot. And I think that there's a lot of good takeaways because, again, I know a lot of women are going through this. And it's becoming more talked about, which I think is awesome. But I think there's still a lot of information out there that is missing. And just being able to hear somebody who's went through it too, and that relatability, I think goes a long way. So I will let you round it out by either adding anything that you want to add that we maybe didn't cover, and letting everyone know where they can follow you for more health, fitness, IVF thoughts, advice, education, all that good stuff.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, you guys can follow me on Instagram or TikTok. J Lee Sexton, JLEESEXTONN. I think it's actually two N's. But anyway, yeah, follow me on there. And if you guys ever want a support person, if you ever have any other questions, please send me a DM or something like that. I am fully like, as you can see, I'm fully open and transparent about everything we've gone through, and I'm okay with that. So reach out, and that's another recommendation that I would give is to find a support system. Also, like, I mean, yes, you're going to have your husband or significant other or whoever as your support system, but it's always nice to kind of have additional people who are also going through it as a support system too. I ended up connecting with so many people on Instagram, and even on TikTok, like a ton of people on TikTok, where I still keep in contact with them now. And now we're going through pregnancy together, and it's so much fun to like be able to keep in contact with them. And then even like, if you don't want to announce that you're doing IVF, you don't have to. But if you decide to announce that you're doing IVF, it's also really special too, because I learned of a lot of people in my life, like family, friends, and people I went to college with who actually ended up going through it, and they reached out to me to give me advice and stuff. So just realize no matter what route you go, like whether you talk about it or not, like it's going to be special in its own way as well.
It's gonna be special. You're gonna get a little baby, little
Yeah.
human. Have you picked her name yet? Have you shared
Yeah,
it? Have you shared it or is it private?
I'll share it. No, we have shared it.
Yeah. Okay.
Her name is Oakley.
I think you did tell us maybe that. Oh, I love that name. Oakley, middle name?
We have a middle name, but
Okay,
we're keeping the middle name
curious.
a
Okay.
secret.
Oakley, question mark, Sexton. Do 3.5 months. Okay, I'm so excited. We're gonna have a little EA baby again. Again. And Megan, join the little, what will be the third? Yeah, EA kid. But awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here, Jess. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks guys for listening. We will see you next week.
Bye. Thank you.